to Deccan Dialogues. Today we have with us two economists and public intellectuals, Prabhakar Parakala and Mohan Guruswamy. They will discuss the issue of how India was created, rather put together from a collection of motley states at the time of independence.
The 75th year of independence, we should go back to where this country was and how we got it in 1947, 14th August. What was this country before Pakistan came out and before India became independent? If you look at that map, the directly administered territories of the British were about half or less, 40% of India. The majority of today's India was indirectly administered by princely states. Some of these princely states were pretty big: Jammu Kashmir, Hyderabad, Jodhpur, Jaipur. They're pretty big, as large as some European countries. Hyderabad was bigger than Britain. So after that, if you look at the creation of the republic, the integration of the country, it's a different map you'll see in 51.
That's right.
Now, the process of integration itself was interesting. From 3 presidencies, we started integrating state by state. Some states had only 4 villages. Some states like Jammu Kashmir. So the process with the cabinet took on this onerous task of putting them together one after the other till the final integration of Hyderabad, which is going to celebrate its integration on 17th of September again. So I was wondering, how did we do a good job of it? Or did the process of integration stop somewhere? Or do we still have to go further to complete it?
It's very interesting. I mean, as you said, in a few days' time, we are celebrating the liberation of Hyderabad Day on 17th of September. And sitting here in Hyderabad in the Deccan, it's more topical for us to look at it. And in so many ways, integration of Hyderabad, or if you choose to call it liberation of Hyderabad, and the way the Republic of India took shape from 47 to 48, 49, and of course later on how it redefined itself, how the political geography has been redefined. This is a very interesting process. Mohan, you're aware that when we gained independence in 1947, all these princely states, integration of them was one challenge. The other challenge was democratization. Because you see, the political development of the princely states was very, very different from the political development of the directly British administered presidencies. In many parameters, representation, well, it was limited, but yet there was representation. And under the big tent Indian National Congress, the national movement, you had agitations, satyagraha, political mobilization, which was, for all practical purposes, either absent was or was negligible in the princely states. The Hyderabad, Junagadh and Jammu and Kashmir. These were the 3 princely states that resisted integration into the Indian Union. The first to capitulate was Junagadh because the ruler had fled to Pakistan.
Then there was a popular uprising.
Yes. And then Hyderabad was the military.
After he acceded.
After he acceded. But,
Pakistan, yeah.
And slightly more complicated process was with Hyderabad. And we all know what is the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. And today also,
you must not forget Jodhpur.
Yeah.
Jodhpur also wanted to accede to Pakistan.
Yes.
It's very interesting. Then VP Menon had to fly down, read the Riot Act to the Maharaja saying why he should not do it.
Yeah.
And then came back with the letter of accession. That's interesting. But sorry, I disrupted you.
But these are the 3 which really held out. And Hyderabad, and after that, of course, you still continue to have some kind of a problem with J&K. let's look at Hyderabad. Hyderabad, it's a multi
Linguistic.
lingual. You had Telugu, you had Marathi, you had Kannada, um, and a very rich state, good amount of revenue. I think the highest revenue among the princely states was
No,
Hyderabad.
Hyderabad.
In fact, geographically also the extent was large. Largest was
Yeah.
Hyderabad. But the state was rich, the kingdom was rich. The people, majority of them were
Very poor.
very, very poor because the taxation and everything was rapacious. Integration and democratization, these were the two challenges. If you look at the subsequent developments of these states, I think Hyderabad state has done far better, to my mind, than most of the others because um, democratization, industrialization, modernization. If you look at these three aspects, Hyderabad remained far ahead of the other erstwhile capitals of princely states. Look at Gwalior, look at Junagadh, look at the other Mysore. Uh, compare them to Hyderabad. Hyderabad is now in the forefront of technology, in the forefront of so many parameters.
This was certainly one benefit of becoming a part of Andhra Pradesh.
Andhra Pradesh and integrating.
And integration with with the union. But Andhra Pradesh got its long needed spread of capital,
That's right.
which flowed in from the coastal regions and got
All the
invested
agriculture
here.
surplus because
And the
Telangana did-
techies. Engineering colleges produced the techies
Yes.
who made a center
Yeah. Because the
out of
hinterland
Hyderabad.
of Telangana did not have much surplus to extract.
Absolutely.
Whereas the coastal agriculture, because it's irrigated, it is Raitwari system, etc. All the surplus that was extracted from the agriculture in the other region has come here to be invested, and there's a lot of development here. And between 1938 to 1948, the kind of movement that has taken place, be it the inspired by the communists or socialists or Arya Samajists, etc., there are many streams of thought and ideological streams. They have also enriched the political development. Um, Therefore, after the integration, democratization did not pose much of a challenge, unlike, say, in Kashmir and other places.
True. But I have always termed Hyderabad accession or integration, never as liberation. Liberation from what? If you're talking about a Muslim ruled state, there were many other Muslim ruled states who joined the union. Junagadh was there, Bhopal was there, and there are small principalities in UP which were Muslim ruled. They all joined India. But you don't describe that as liberation. Here this liberation business was coined by local political conditions, which the RSS is trying to claim. It was liberated, something in which they had no role. Actually, if there was a liberation force in Hyderabad, it was the Congress party.
And to some extent the communists.
They both fought against the Nizam. And the Nizam's government was a feudal government. It was not a democratic government. And it was a feudalism dominated by people of one religion also. Out of the 1200 or 1300 civil servants, covenanted civil servants in the state, almost 1050 were Muslims.
Your father was one of them.
My father was one of them. And I remember he used to tell me that when he joined service in 36 or so, he had to go to office in a Sherwani and affairs. And they had to learn Persian and they had to know Urdu. My father was proficient in Urdu and Persian. And so that was compulsory. In the Hyderabad civil service, you dressed like a Nawabi nobleman and you went to office.
The mannerisms and the manners and the language.
Absolutely. And so, even the police was like that. Everything was like that. So, integration of Hyderabad meant more. It was transfer of power also from one elite to a new elite. You know, the first time we came across civil service officers, IAS officers, ICS officers came from other states. So the old feudal system was replaced by a civil government, which is also a change of systems which took place in a large part of the country. It was a very impressive transition. You know, if you looked at the inequality, the nobilities, and there were many Hindu nobles also who did well, extremely well. But they, in the countryside, my father served in the revenue service, and he said they were usurious. Because they were fixed the tax, and they had to give the Nizam's government something, and something which went to Sarfakhas, to the Nizam's private estate, and so that money had to keep going. So the landlords would exploit. Many of the local landlords were Hindus. They were Nawabs also, but many more were Hindu landlords. I mean, they were just as usurious as anybody else.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, so to say that we liberated Hyderabad, it's a lot of nonsensical. Hyderabad system changed, and we joined into a larger democratic system.
Yeah, integration.
Integration, yes. And the 17th is when the Nizam was caught in, at one time, as a big state, he wanted independence. Who wouldn't have wanted independence? Jodhpur wanted independence. At one time, Baroda also toyed with it. Various people toyed with it because the option was given. Either join us or you go on your own. But if you go on your own, remember you won't get any help from us.
Yeah.
And remember you're surrounded in many cases. Junagadh actually joined, but he was thrown out by the people. So that was also a worry. Do you think Nizam could have acceded and the population wouldn't have asserted itself?
Sustainable? Would that have been sustainable?
Absolutely, the population would have asserted itself sooner or later. So I think good things happened, except that the same issue we couldn't resolve in Jammu Kashmir. One of the things about Hyderabad, which happened very quickly in '56, was the state was dismembered. Hyderabad, Karnataka went to Karnataka, Marathwada went to Maharashtra, and Telangana went to Andhra. You know, so it was completely disappeared from the political map of India. It was very interesting, but that template was not followed in Jammu Kashmir. You know, at that time, you know, nobody could have stopped Jammu from being. It was the Hindi-speaking, Dogri-speaking part of the country from joining into Himachal Pradesh, which is a logical connection for it.
That's right.
But it was not done because this whole thing of, you know, it went to the UN, entity called Jammu Kashmir itself was an entity put together in the last 100 years before independence by Gulab Singh and his successors.
Yeah.
They just
it was internationalized.
And it was multilingual, multicultural, multi-ethnic. It was a microcosm of Asia. And there was no way India could have left the heights of Asia in the hands of a possibly inimical power. Who knows? After all, Pakistan soon after that joined NATO, CENTO and Southeast Asia. You could have had American troops sitting there.
Yeah. Bases.
Cold War there. So, you know, it's a good thing in hindsight, and I think people there had foresight. They insisted, though at one time Sardar Patel wanted to give it away, saying let's not get into this, it's a mess. And he was right. It was a mess. But it's a mess now because at that time we wanted it to come into a secular state. But now if you have a state whose foundational basis is religion and a certain culture, then you'll have problems with that. Because the basis of integrating Kashmir into India was that we are a secular state.
Exactly.
So you can be what you are.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, Kishanganj, so Muslim dominated district in Bihar, or Mallapuram, which is still a Muslim majority area, old city of Hyderabad, still Muslim. But you're part of India, you're part of secular India.
They can keep their faith, but be part of. It is not a mirror image of Pakistan. That's what we wanted to create.
Precisely.
The Indian Republic is defined that way. It
was not to be a Hindu Pakistan.
Yeah.
You know, and it was based on universal secular values. And when you lose that, then we are actually buying the Pakistan argument that we are separate people who can't live together, which is not correct. But the accession, the creation of that India after that, you know, we go further From 51 we'll go to 56. 56 was linguistic states.
That's right.
If you look at the map of India in 56 and 51, two different maps there. A lot of small states like Pepsu and Mahakoshan states all got subsumed into larger entities. Like Haryana and Punjab, composite Punjab, took away a lot of small states.
United provinces and central provinces.
Central provinces, Mahakoshal. I should remember there used to be hockey teams in the Rangaswamy Trophy, which played for Mahakoshal and some played for Bhopal. So reflected the old divisions, post-Indian divisions. But after the process of integration was towards linguistic states. So we suddenly came up with this whole idea of that we will be held together by our language. But that also didn't proceed further, because if that was so, then Bihar couldn't have been one Hindi-speaking state, or UP couldn't have been one Hindi-speaking, or Madhya Pradesh, or Rajasthan. But here they emerged as a Hindi-speaking monolith, and now presents a new challenge to the rest of India. Suddenly you have one minority which is huge, which is almost 40% of India, and then the others are fragmented into small bits. Like the size of the south has actually come down from 24% to 19% in this last 75 years. So we have to wonder what's going to happen to us. Are we going to get smaller? The number of MPs, already delimitation is imposed on us. The number of MPs will come down from each of our states, because we've done well. Our incomes are better. Because our incomes are better, our populations grew slowly. Our education standards are higher. We contribute hugely to India's foreign exchange earnings through IT and through pharmacy, pharmaceuticals and all that. And also bulk of industrialization outside Maharashtra, outside Bombay, is in the south.
Yep.
Now what will happen to us? Our population is also aging, because if you stop growing, then we reach zero population in 2024.
Yep.
Then what happens to the south? So these are issues we have to now deal with. This is the next stage of integration, to keep us integrated.
Yeah.
By getting back to those old values again, the founding values, that we will have universal values. Now, if our universal values are challenged and changed, are we going to be a part of a Samraj, or an empire? Whose empire? Are we going to be ruled from the north, from Delhi? So this second phase again is, I think we should logically move towards this greater autonomy.
See, the initial challenge was to integrate and democratize. I think today's challenge, if you look at the princely states, because you see the political development or democratization of these areas which were under the kings and the dynasties, in contradistinction to the British. The political development and democratization was lagging behind in comparison. Now, in the last 75 years, 70 years after the integration, more or less, all these places have become even on a par with the rest of India in their integration as well as in the democratization process. But today, I think the challenge is before the Indian Republic after 75 years is decentralization. How do you decentralize? You've integrated, you've democratized. But democratization does not mean centralized democratization.
That suits a totalitarian state better.
Democratization acquires meaning. It's more meaningful if it is decentralized. And the areas which were earlier under the princely states and under the British, when they came together, the democratization process was unequal in these two places. Therefore, if you look at the areas which are dominated by the princes and the kings and the feudal oligarchy. You had the Maharaja becoming an MP, a Zamindar becoming a Zilla Parishad chairman, a smaller feudal lord becoming the Samiti president or municipal, that kind of a thing. That was there until say about 80s or so. From 80s onwards, even that has slowly taken a back.
Largely gone.
It's
largely gone. Except if you're very backward area like Gwalior.
Yeah.
You can have a Maharaja still dominating.
Very few and far between. Now the thing is that and they were personalities. Institutions were not allowed to take root in all these princely states, except a few which were very progressive, like Mysore and a few other places, even in the northern India, Travancore, Cochin, etc. Except those, the other princely states, territories were low in literacy, low in education, elites dominating, and in most of these places, the ruling elites did not produce, the process did not produce the counter elites. For instance, in Hyderabad state, you've described the kind of the elite structure, but there was not much of a counter elite from within Hyderabad state.
But paradox is very interesting. You didn't have that elite, you had a nascent Congress party with Ramanantir agitating, but this old Hyderabad state with its primitive political development and the dry conditions of the land produced three chief ministers simultaneously.
Yeah.
You had Shankarrao Chavan in Maharashtra, you had Virendra Patil in Karnataka, and P.V. Narasimha Rao here. Then he went on to become Prime Minister.
Yeah, and all of them were graduates of
Ramanand Tirth
and Osmania.
And Usman University, at the law school.
Yeah.
So, so that you can give it to Hyderabad's credit and to the education system set up by the earlier regime. But it's still a government institution. You see, when the Nizam's government set it up, it does not mean the Nizam set it up. It was set up with the very few things which the Nizam started with his own money. As a ruler, he could, there are some other families also who did this in India, they put their names to everything, but they didn't build it. It was built by the state. So I think to that extent, Hyderabad, being a bigger state, benefited more, had more institutions, had a railway, an airline, an army, a police service, all of its own, postal service. So all these institutions were there. Banks. They didn't have, except they didn't have local government. We had a traditional panchayat system of a hereditary Patel and a hereditary Patwari and all that. But made the transition very well into a modern panchayati edifice. But the people who were at the center of affairs, either state capitals or in Delhi, didn't allow that to happen. Panchayati Raj officially came to India.
So that remains still a challenge. The decentralization.
Absolutely. It came in 56. The complete template was drawn. But everybody paid lip service to it but didn't do anything about it. Today, our panchayats are looking for handouts because they have nothing to collect. Because you don't have, if you take out land revenue, what have they got to collect?
They have nothing.
If even today, if you say you can collect on land, small amounts, maybe they'll get some money. Maybe there'll be more cooperation among themselves, collectivization.
You see, the elected representatives of the local governments, be it panchayat or nagar panchayat or municipality or corporation, they hardly have any powers as far as finances are concerned, the functionaries are concerned, functions are concerned. Although the constitution amendment that we brought in, the 91st and 92nd amendment, it is not followed because you see our constitution gives you a structure of a two-tier structure, the union government and the state government. The states fight for their financial rights, their functions. They have a list which is protected by the constitution, but they want more and more delegation of powers and devolution of finances from the center. At the same time, the states are not willing to devolve and decentralize
to the
to
local
the
governments,
local institutions and the local governments. In fact, our directive principles of state policy, they do suggest that from local institutions, they should become self-governing institutions, and eventually our dream is to make them local self-governments.
Gram Swaraj.
Gram Swaraj. But you see,
This is halted.
that is actually it is not even stagnation, Mohan. You know, we have gone back in so far as the local institutions is concerned, because today the sarpanch is not made accountable, is not empowered to lay a road or to give any local facilities, medical facilities or hospitals or libraries or institutions or
No authority to sanction anything.
Absolutely, there is no control and no sanction, nothing. Everything is in the state government. Not even Zilla Parishad has meaningful powers today.
You know, I once spent a few days in a tribal village near Betul in Madhya Pradesh. It's very interesting. The Gram Pradhan, Sarpanch was a woman, a tribal woman. So she had the keys to the Panchayat office, and there was a godown with PDS rice and wheat there. The secretary of that Panchayat was a clerk who lived in Betul. So he would come down on his motorbike, and he came down on the motorbike. I was sitting and watching, and he asked us, office kholo. So he's telling his boss, open the office.
Yeah.
And then he says, kuch chai bana hai kya?
Oh my God.
You know?
Look at that.
So she said, abhi banate hain. She made tea for him. And then he sat on this register law. Kya? So he saw everything and then ticked off what's okay sign. He said, theek hai, and I'm going. So in half an hour, he did his inspection and pushed off. Whereas it is his job to
do all
this and see that the rice is distributed
and report to the sarpanch.
To his, and report to saying that we have done all this. But he's because he's a permanent government employee, earning 4 times more or 5 times more than that woman.
Controlled by the state government.
Controlled by the state government. Nobody can sack him. So he comes as the representative of the Raj. You can't have that kind of system for local self-government. Everybody has to be local. And socially and economically almost at the same level. You can't have a guy coming in a car. You know, I've seen in Hyderabad, school teachers now going to their schools in cars. You know, and so the equivalent of a clerk would come in a car. It's possible. 50,000-60,000 rupees, and a car is second-hand car, and a Maruti you can get for 40,000-50,000 rupees. So I think this process has to start all over again. You know, process of, I think we integrated too much into a colonial system. We have to disintegrate a bit.
And decentralize. I think there has to be an atmosphere in the debate which persuades the state governments to loosen their grip over the local governments. In as much as the union government will have to be persuaded or even pressurized to loosen its grip over the state governments and the finances and the kind of list. There's no need for the union government to have so many items on its list.
Absolutely.
And by the same token, the state governments need not look at the school and control a school in my village.
Absolutely.
I think my panchayat, my pradhan, my sarpanch and my block president or samiti president or mandal president, she or he will have to do that kind of a thing.
You know, we used to have erstwhile presidency states, we used to have district boards. You have the district education board, district health board. They appointed the teachers, they appointed the doctors, they supervised the hospitals. All that is gone. Now you got...
That's exactly what I said. We have gone back on it.
Absolutely.
In many ways, decentralization has taken a reverse direction. It's center is centralizing, union government is centralizing, taking away the state government's powers, and state governments are centralizing, taking away the local government's powers.
And till the late 60s, the presidency states had boards of revenue, where each revenue member, board member, used to have 5 or 6 departments under him. Overall, he was the commissioner, say, commissioner for land reforms, would have all the different agencies of land reform, commissioner for agriculture would have irrigation, everything under him. And they would supervise the officers
And
under
board
him.
of revenue is very powerful.
Very powerful. But the politicians destroyed the board of revenue because board of revenue was a buffer between, say, a district collector and the minister or the chief minister. Chief ministers, I remember chief ministers used to ask board of revenue members to transfer somebody.
Yeah. Today, board of revenue is now more or less transferred to the chief minister's office.
And completely dismembered.
Yeah.
The old board of revenue office in Hyderabad, where my father used to work, sits as a very forlorn office with nothing in it. At one time, yesterday I met a person who retired as revenue secretary. He said when he joined the IAS in 69, the group was taken to the board of revenue to meet the members. And he said it was like going to see the gods
Yeah.
at the top. So that is gone. So you have unfettered control by the elected politicians. Election is also a questionable process now because of what's happened to the party system. So what have we left with? Are we better off than we were in 47 or we worse off?
Yeah.
The question, I think there should be a discussion, debate in this country.
So which means, Mohan, I would say this in closing, that we had integration and democratization as the challenge. Now we have identified another challenge which has emerged now as the decentralization challenge. But if you look at integration, you see the territorial integration has taken place, but then we have different kind of fault lines now, different kind of disintegration or threatening disintegration, among regions, languages and religions especially, that is throwing up a new challenge now. The other one, democratization also, as you said, we need to rethink about our electoral process and the constituency, representation, and then that is linked to the decentralization, which institution has to discharge what kind of duties and what is the kind of wherewithal, administrative wherewithal, the financial wherewithal that they can command.
And also to bring political parties under the framework of regulation.
Yeah.
That they can't function as freebooting associations
Yeah.
led by one man
Yeah.
or a mob led by one man.
Pocket organization,
Absolutely.
family organization.
So the
Proprietorships.
election commission should say what is your constitution, are you functioning to that, are you having inner party elections, and the minutes of the meetings, inner party meetings, should be a public record.
Exactly.
If you discuss the 5-year plan, tell us what did you think about it.
Yes.
If you discuss an irrigation plan, what was the discussion? Public needs to know.
Yeah.
Party needs to know.
Yeah.
So I think we should begin to formalize all this. It can't be a free-for-all evolving democracy like it evolved in Britain or America. It has to be more structured here.
Yes.
So that will then take the process of integration to one more step here. Thank you.